UGREEN, you probably know them for their great power supplies, for their accessories, cables and whatnot, but they also do make portable power stations. This model here that they sent out to me, and by the way, they are sponsoring this video, is their PowerRoam 1200. So 1200 watt output, but it can also peak to 2500 watts, and it's using LFP battery cells. So they're the high quality battery cells, and they do have what is called power zips. So it can charge up to 80% in only 50 minutes. And to fully charge the 1024 watt hour capacity only takes an hour and a half. So it can charge simultaneously up to 13 devices. And with this model here, it only weighs 12 kilos. So it's light, it is portable. And in this video, I will be going through some real-world tests to let you know exactly what it's all about, and also test out this right here in front of me. That is their 200-watt portable solar panel. Now, with two of those, you can charge this battery station in about 4 hours. I also do have a very powerful 450-watt solar panel that I'll be testing the solar input to, and just how it charges the PowerRoam 1200. Included with our PowerRoam 1200, you will find a user manual here. Now that's in various different languages, a 5-year warranty card, and user instructions. The power cable is just that, so we don't get a power supply because it's internal with this unit. So it will fully charge in 1.5 hours, and it gets up to 80% really quickly in only 50 minutes. We've got a DC cable here, the XT60 connector to car adapter, so the cigarette lighter socket for car charging, which is rather slow. So it's going to take 6 hours if you have a 24-volt system, 12 hours if you've got a 6-volt system, and then we get some XT60 cables here. That is for solar panels, and they even do include this little pouch here for all of our cables. Now, the build quality of the PowerRoam 1200 here is excellent. The plastics, the finish to them, there's no sharp edges, so it's flame retardant plastic. The handle feels excellent. We've got a light here, so you can turn that on and off just via this button. It does have an SOS mode too with it. It can be controlled via the application. We have two Type-C 100-watt outputs here. They support power delivery to Type-A ports here, 22.5 watts each, and they're compatible with various different quick charge standards. And then we have the DC side of things here too. There's a button to control that on and off. So it's 12 volts, 10 amps, and out of our DC side here with the cigarette lighter and then the two plugs, it's 120 watts maximum. But we do have 1200 watts with the AC plugs right here. That is in total 1200 max. And you'll see that they've got this little dust cap that goes over them just to protect them. There's a power on and off button for it, and right here is a fan, so there's one either side. On the left, under this little flap here, you will find then the protective earth point. This is our input for solar charging and also the car charging, so that is 12 to 48 volts, 15 amps or 400 watts max. Now, I did slightly exceed that with my solar input with the charging, and it did not trigger this, which is the overcharge protection. So if that does pop out, you simply need to press that back in and away you go, you're up and running. So really good that it does have this overcharge protection. Some earlier models, not from UGREEN, but some other brands that I reviewed did not have this, and you can damage it and in fact destroy it so you wouldn't be able to charge it anymore. So it's really good that it's got it. And then that is of course our AC in to charge it. So it only takes 50 minutes to get to 80%. It's very quick with the LFP batteries. Then the other fan right here. So the idea of the active cooling, of course, is to keep all the components inside nice and cool. Nothing's going to overheat, but it does have a BMS, which is our battery management system. So it's monitoring everything to make sure that it's not going to overheat and it is safe. And our 200-watt solar panel here, it's portable, it folds out, and I'll show you how to set it up shortly. So it's 19 volts and 10.5 amps. So with one of these, charge time will be rather slow, around about 7 to 8 hours. But if you've got two of them, then you can fully charge the 1024 watt hour battery in about 4 hours. And in the box, you will find your standard solar connector cable here to XT60. and an XT60 to XT60 cable. Now I'll show you how quick and easy it is to set it up. So these legs here, they obviously need to be facing downwards because they're going to be supporting the weight of the solar panel. So opening it up, you just need to unfold it like so. You can see it is quite large here. And then using these four legs to prop it up like so. Now they do have even a little gauge here to try and get the little dot inside the red circle. And the idea behind that is you get the optimum angle towards the sun so you can get the maximum efficiency and the best possible charging rate. So what I'll do now is connect this up to the PowerRoam 1200. Now these panels are weatherproof, so you don't need to worry about them being rained on. And of course, they're going to handle the sunlight. That's what they're designed for. So they shouldn't fade, the plastic shouldn't crack or anything. So the connector port is located on the right-hand side here. That's for the XT60 connector. So I'm just going to plug that in now. Done. And we'll have a look at what kind of charge rates I can get from this 200-watt solar panel. All right, so I haven't quite got the optimal angle here because I cannot get the panels back further. The sun's almost right overhead. And I'm only looking at, well, 100 watts is the best I've seen so far. And it does tell me it's going to take 1.8 hours to charge the remaining 17%. So that last 20% of the battery is always quite a bit slower. But I am a little bit disappointed in the wattage here. From a 200-watt panel, I was expecting at least 150 watts, considering it is a clear day. There's a tiny little bit of haze in the sky, but that shouldn't really be affecting the panel performance. So this PowerRoam 1200 can take 400 watts maximum solar input. This panel here that I've got, its maximum output is 450 watts. Now the best I've seen it do is about 405 watts. So hopefully it's not going to trigger the overload protection, but let's find out what kind of charging rates I can get with this huge, proper, not portable solar panel. Right, this is looking very promising here. So close to the 400 watts, which is the maximum I've really seen out of this panel. And just what can it be used for? Well, power tools, you're pretty much covered because it's 1200 watts. So that's going to cover, I think, about 90% of most power tools out there. So this line trimmer that I've got, it's about 400 watts, but it does peak sometimes up to about 600. Let's have a look and see how the PowerRoam 1200 handles it. Now, it was not a problem at all for the battery station to be able to handle this output. Now, the screen did tell me that at its current wattage, it should be able to run for about an hour and a half off almost a fully charged battery, just over an hour and a half, which is not bad at all. So that gives me enough time to be able to do all of the edges, probably about twice, maybe even 3 times over with this large capacity battery being 1024 watt hours. And then my personal biggest use for these power stations is this. So I don't have to run a lead out here with the vacuum. I take out the battery bank here. Now, according to the battery gauge on there, the screen tells me I get 1.3 hours of runtime with this vacuum. So this means I can clean the car properly without having to rely on one of those stupid battery operated vacuum cleaners. Let's face it, they don't do a good job. This is up to 1000 watts in suction performance. So let's see how it handles it. As expected, the 1000-watt vacuum cleaner here wasn't an issue for it. So just before I go and test out this with common household appliances like hair dryer and a kettle to boil water and test the overload protection, let's take a look at the car charging. Okay, so every car is going to be different. We're charging at 103 watts here, and it's going to take 1.6 hours to charge the remaining 14% here. So it will take on a 12-volt system around 6 hours to fully charge. So this really is reserved for emergencies only if you just needed to top up the battery a little bit, because it's quite hard too on your alternator if you always did this. Our screen displays all of the key info. You can see currently I've got 1050 watts as I'm charging it. It's going to take 11 minutes to fully charge, 81%. I've got 20 watts going out at the moment, and it will be able to go for, well, it's saying 100 hours here because it's charging at the same time. So it's infinity. It will just keep going, of course. The Type-C ports there, Type A, And this is our fan logo. So the fan is on at the moment. It is very quiet. I can barely hear it, but we are certainly going to hear it now as I put the power station under some stress. For this test, it's my kettle test. So I'm going to boil some water. Will it be able to do this? Now, a lot of the power stations I test out, they just simply overload. So that trips their built-in overload safety mechanism. But let's have a look. Put that on now. It's not on. There we go. This is now on. I can see the blue light on the kettle. So it is pulling now 1700 watts. Down now to 1600. Still around 17. And I can clearly hear that water is starting now to boil already. Well, it's making its noise. So because I do have it charging at the moment, I'm going to remove that. Perhaps it's giving it a boost in the wattage. It seems it is. There we go. It's dropped down now to 1280 watts, but it continues to stay on. It hasn't tripped out yet, overload protection, and it is meant to be able to surge up to 2500 watts, but it's just lowered the voltage now. The good thing though, of course, it hasn't cut out. So that jug is going to boil. Not a problem. It'll stay on and you'll be able to do that in emergency situations. That is very handy. Now I'm going to step it up and plug in a hairdryer. So I did turn off the jug, the kettle there. The water's not boiling anymore. Now I'll set the hairdryer first to our first lowest level with its heat. Okay, that is fine. It's pulling about 1100 watts. I'll put it onto the maximum. And again, it's limiting itself to almost 1300 watts there, but it stays on. Now I have tested this out before the hairdryer. It will just keep going and going and going. So again, this is good, but we're losing some performance out of the hairdryer. It's not as hot as it normally is, but it's still enough to be able to dry your hair. So if you needed this in an emergency situation or camping, well, it is going to be able to do it. So run a hairdryer and boil water. That's great. Finally, it is time to test out the overload protection. So I'm going to turn on the hairdryer and then boil water at the same time. This will cause it to trip out. Well, it should at least. So we'll see what happens. Okay, that did not take long at all. It is beeping at me and it displayed a F43 overload protection error. So that's normal. I just need to turn it off, wait a little while and turn it back on and it will be fine. In fact, it's done it by itself. It has auto reset there. Now the UPS test. So it's uninterrupted power supply feature. It's supposed to be able to switch over going from grid to the battery in 20 milliseconds. So you can see I've got AC plugged in here, charging at 1000 watts. Turn on the hairdryer now and then I'll remove it and we'll see what happens. Okay, you could hear the RPM of the hairdryer step down, but that was very quick when it switched over. Lastly, the fan noise and heat. So I've been loading it up, charging at the same time, and yes, you can clearly hear the fan. It's on, but it is quieter than the EcoFlow and Bluetooth equivalents that I have reviewed from them, around the same capacity, so just over 1000 watt hours. I could feel a little bit of warm air coming out from the right side. So it does seem it sucks in from the left, blows that air through to cool it, and that's where it is coming out. So I'll give you a sample of it now. This is under full load, and remember, this is not the quiet mode. This is the standard mode. I think it's acceptable, but if you're in the room with it, you will hear it, but you can use that quiet mode option. So here is our application. It's just simply called UGREEN. Now you do need to register an email. You need a confirmation code that you later need to enter in. Once you do all of that, you can then sign into the app. So straight away, it gives us this screen here with our current battery percentage. You can see the temperature of it too at 37 degrees Celsius, and then just all of the current information. So it's currently charging at 1062 watts. I'm outputting 43 watts here, and it's got 11 minutes of charge time left to get to 100%, so that's not bad at all. Now here you can see the AC side of things, DC, you can turn that on or off, all from the application, which can work either wirelessly or via Bluetooth. And here we have the USB port. So the Type-C port, one of them I'm using at the moment to charge a tablet. It's outputting the 43 watts. The Type-A's are doing nothing. Flashlight on the front, you can control that. And then under here, we've got a lot of settings. So we've got the screen settings. This is basically to do with the timeout, the brightness of the display. You have operating modes right there. So standard, power saving, always on mode. It does even have a UPS function built into it. This battery station, which is 20 milliseconds, the time it will take to swap over. Shutdown settings. So there are some options here that you can configure there. So you can set the time, the battery capacity, a certain capacity, have it shut down. Battery preservation mode. So imagine you want to really hang on to this for as long as possible. And now it's got the LFP cells in there, which are the best. They're good for about 3,000 cycles until the capacity drops to 80%. But you can prolong this even more there, you can see with some options. So when it reaches 90%, you can have all the outputs disabled. And there's just a few other things in there too as well you can set. So there's a lot on there. Child safety mode, audio tones, quiet mode's a handy one. So if you don't want it making as much noise as it can when it's charging at the full rate or discharging, or outputting, should I say, you can lower that down. And in the quiet mode, you won't hear those fans as much. Temperature units, low battery alerts, the frequency output there for AC, so 50 or 60 hertz, and DC charging current. You can even control that too as well. Imagine you've got it hooked up to some solar panels, you want to reduce the charging rate. Well, you can do that there. There's even firmware updates too as well. And I am on the latest firmware at the time of this video. So there's a lot in this application. Very useful, all of that information it does give us. All right, so recapping here, I am impressed with this little unit right here. And no, it's not just because this is a sponsored video. Not at all, because it passed my kettle test, and that was to boil water. It will eventually do it, as I showed you. And yes, the output does drop down. So it's not pulling like 2,000 watts. It was around about 1350 maximum, but eventually it can boil water. So great for camping needs, emergency situations. You need to boil water. Well, it will be able to do it, where so many other portable power stations have failed to do so. They simply just trigger their overload protection, and that is it. And even a hairdryer set to the maximum setting, again, you could tell it wasn't running at the full output, which can go up to 2,500 watts, but it would still let it work. It would still be enough to be able to dry your hair if you needed to do that with a hairdryer. And then all the garden tools that I showed you and the vacuum cleaner, it can handle that. So most of those power tools that you'll be using, those appliances, it's going to be able to handle this. Now, I love the portable lightweight size to it. So only 12 kilos here. The fact that it can charge to 80% in just 50 minutes with its power zip, that's another great feature. And overall, I think this is an excellent portable power station here from UGREEN. So thank you so much for watching this video on the PowerRoam 1200.